He's also threatening Apple now with a 25% tariff if the company doesn't bring iPhone manufacturing back to the US. Quote, I have long ago informed Tim Cook of Apple that I expect their iPhones that will be sold in the United States, that if they do not do that, they will be paying a tariff of at least 25%. Cost of labor is just so much higher in the United States. iPhones, it would increase the price of an iPhone to $3,500 if the iPhone had to be made in the United States. Ives put out a note earlier where he said, we believe the concept of Apple producing iPhones in the US is a fairy tale. That is not feasible. Apple stock down almost 3%. And this is a concern about the trade wars that Trump is trying to exert some more pressure on the EU, threatening these 50% tariffs. Of course, there is Apple. I think we've got what if I told you your next iPhone could cost more than your rent? And not because of some fancy new feature, but because of a single post by Donald Trump. Yeah, buckle up. This isn't your average tech news. This is a power play, a trade war twist, and a move that could flip the US economy on its head. But here's the kicker. You haven't even heard the craziest part yet. Stick around. It's not what you think. It all began on a seemingly normal morning until Donald Trump logged onto his favorite platform and dropped a bombshell that made Wall Street flinch. Without any heads up to the markets, he announced a 50% tariff on all European Union imports, effective June 1st. And just as investors were catching their breath, he threw in another shocker. A 25% tariff on Apple unless they bring iPhone manufacturing back to the United States. Now, you might be wondering, what's the big deal? It's just another Trump tweet, right? Wrong. This wasn't noise. It was policy in real time. A direct economic threat to one of America's biggest tech giants. The market didn't wait to react. Apple stock dropped nearly 3% instantly. He's also threatening Apple now with a 25% tariff if the company doesn't bring iPhone manufacturing back to the US. So this is what we're watching. Claire, talk to me about what we're likely to see with markets today. They're going to be updating in 1 second. And also at the same time about Apple. And this is the concern about the trade wars that Trump is trying to exert some more pressure on the EU, threatening these 50% tariffs. Of course, there is Apple. I think we've got Apple stock down almost 3%, the timing impeccably dangerous. Just when global markets were in a 90-day truce over tariffs, Trump decided to reignite the fire. This wasn't just policy, it was political theater. And like any good drama, the consequences were real. Instability, fear, and economic ripple effects across continents. Behind the scenes, investors who had been quietly hopeful for peace suddenly found themselves in free fall, and the White House busy crafting a narrative. But here's the twist. Apple already moved some of its production out of China to India to dodge earlier tariffs. So what does Trump really want? Is it about jobs, control, revenge, or maybe it's just business? That's just the tip of the iceberg. Ready to uncover what Apple really did, why Trump's threat might backfire, and how this could explode in the faces of everyday Americans. So let's get to the heart of the storm. Why is Trump so obsessed with Apple? Not Facebook, not Google. Apple, the world's most valuable company, the pride of Silicon Valley, and the brand behind the glowing logo in your hand. Trump's target isn't random. This is personal, this is symbolic, and it's risky. Let's rewind. Apple tried to play it smart during the last round of Trump's tariff chaos. To avoid the heat from the US-China trade war, Apple shifted most of its iPhone production meant for US customers from China to India. Sounds reasonable, right? They're protecting their supply chain, keeping iPhones flowing and costs under control. Now, Apple had tried to move some of its production away from China because of the China tariffs that had moved most of the US iPhones that were getting shipped to the US to India. But Trump is not happy about that. He wants iPhones made in the United States, and that is why he's threatening this 25% tariff on Apple. Apple will not be moving iPhone production to the US. Analysts estimate that if it did move iPhone production to the US, it would take 5 to 10 years, and that once that happened, iPhones could cost $3,500. That is 3 times the amount that they cost today, and consumers just wouldn't buy that product. But here's where things get messy. Trump doesn't just want Apple out of China, he wants Apple in the United States building iPhones, right here on American soil. Sounds patriotic, feels like a victory for Made in America. But reality, that's where this dream hits a brick wall. Experts say it would take Apple 5 to 10 years to move its full iPhone production to the US. And when I say expensive, I don't mean a couple $100 more. Try this. The iPhone you buy for $1,000 could jump to $3,500. That's not a new model, that's the same phone with a new price tag, and it doesn't come with gold edges or a diamond screen. So while Trump is threatening Apple with a 25% tariff to force them to move home, the reality is Apple can't. Not yet. Not affordably. And let's be honest, what happens when your average American sees a $3,500 iPhone? They don't celebrate manufacturing jobs. They slam the door on Apple. And Trump knows this. That's the part no one is saying out loud. The experts like veteran tech analyst Dan Ives are calling the idea of Apple making iPhones in the US a fairy tale. But fairy tales don't come with economic fallout. So what's the real play here? Is this just a bluff? Or is Trump betting on public rage to bend Apple to his will? Now let's pull back the curtain on what's really going on inside the White House, because what they're saying privately doesn't match what they're shouting publicly. On camera, they're all smiles, selling this move as a patriotic effort to bring jobs back to American soil. But behind closed doors, even Trump's own people know this is going to hurt American consumers badly. Reporters have been trying to get answers. But when they press the White House press secretary, Caroline Light, on whether iPhone prices will skyrocket under this new tariff plan, she dodges like it's a game of dodgeball. House officials acknowledge, at least privately, that this is going to increase the cost of iPhones for American consumers. I mean, behind closed doors, Wolf, yes, but definitely not in public. And I know myself and other reporters have publicly tried to press White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt on this. Now, look, this post that the president put up about Apple and its CEO, Tim Cook, he essentially said that he has long warned Cook, someone that the president speaks with frequently. I would note that he was actually here at the White House a few days ago. Tim Cook met with Donald Trump on Tuesday here. He said that he's long warned him that he would put this 25% tariff on iPhones if they did not begin moving the manufacturing of those iPhones to the United States. Why? Because even they admit in private, yes, prices will go up and yes, it'll hit your wallet hard. Let's talk numbers. Right now, an iPhone costs around $1,000 in the US. Experts say if Apple is forced to move manufacturing here and tariffs go into effect, prices could explode to $3,500. That's not speculation. That's from top analysts and trade economists who've crunched the numbers. So, while Trump is posting America first on social media behind the scenes, the White House knows it's the American consumer who will pay the price, literally. Even Tim Cook, Apple's CEO, is caught in the middle. He's met with Trump several times, the last one just days before this threat. Trump claims he warned Cook personally, move your factories or pay the price. But Apple is not a corner shop. This is a global tech giant with supply chains in more countries than most people have been to. It's not about loyalty, it's about logistics, economics, and time. But Trump doesn't care about that nuance. He wants a headline. He wants a win. He wants to look like the man who forced the richest company in the world to bow down to him. And if iPhones become unaffordable for average Americans, well, that part isn't in the speech. So here's the harsh truth. This isn't policy, it's posturing. And when politics becomes theatre, it's the audience that pays for the ticket. Just when the world thought Trump's fury was reserved for foreign governments, he flipped the script. With a few more keystrokes, the president turned his attention toward an American icon, a company that helped define 21st century innovation, Apple. Now, pause for a second. Imagine being Tim Cook, CEO of one of the most powerful tech companies on Earth. You've just met with the president in person a couple of days ago. Maybe the conversation went smoothly, maybe it didn't. But what happens next? You open Twitter, and there it is. A direct threat from the President of the United States calling you out by name. It is not happening. It's just not happening. So what the play is here and the pressure that Donald Trump is trying to assert on Tim Cook and Apple right now, that's the TBD, because you know that Trump has to know this reality.